In. We should be
Awesome.
live in a second.
Yes. Hello,
All
hello.
right. Oh, it looks like the broadcast was deleted on Facebook. Try creating a new broadcast or just remove the destination. Huh.
Well, it says we're live right now, so I don't know if we'll still be able to use it for something or we can still use it. If it's not on Facebook right now, don't worry. We can still use
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So hello everybody. Always having broadcast things going on, but good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's so good to see everybody today. We have another Facebook Live with Dr. Nelva Bryant, and we have a different tone to everything as we have a special guest who is going to talk about big animals as opposed to our smaller animals that we call our fur families. So what we'll do is start off with a little bit of Dr. Nelva Bryant and I, and then we will bring our guests on in a little bit. So Dr. Bryant, tell us about yourself and how are you doing?
I am doing great, Greta. I feel like I've missed out on these sessions for the past month, but I have been very busy traveling related to pet travel, but I've been traveling at different meetings and conferences and what have you in reference to that. I've been doing, I'm very happy that I've been doing some writing. Actually, I wrote an article that's in the Georgia Veterinary Medical Association's, I think it's their quarterly magazine, but I'm getting some articles published. That one was on health certificates because that's an important thing that folks really don't understand the concept behind it as far as the pet owners and also my fellow veterinarians too, in some instances with that. So just doing a lot of different work regarding that and continuing forward. I'm happy to be back. I'm very proud of my Greta. I have to say, I'm so happy what you did. The last events we had with Positives health certificates, I was supposed to have been there. I was away and my link didn't work, but Greta held it down and I'm so proud of her for being there. And I'm so happy you're on my team. So I want to thank you. And I'm sorry I don't have the applause machine going today, but thank you regarding
Thank
that.
you.
So we've had some interesting things, right? These past couple, at least for February, we had some good stuff going on, right?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, positive pet health certificates, they were a great interview and it was so needed. Those ladies broke everything down. They are such a gift to everyone, pet parents and veterinarians, as they are helping to facilitate the most crucial part of the process in planning for pet travel.
Right.
So we definitely have to have them back at another time.
That would be great. So before we get started with Rochelle, who I love, I'm so happy. Well, I'll let you introduce her, but I'm very happy Rochelle is with us today. I've met her through just working with the zoo, with basically the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. The transport of zoo animals is very crucial and for conservation reasons. So I'm very happy for her to be here and share just another aspect of animal transportation. But before we go there, any tips or anything you think we should discuss before we get started?
Well, you know, you and I have been really doing our homework on crates and everything. And so many times we have explained to everyone what not to get in a crate or what to look for that is bad in a crate. And we came across two perfect examples of crates to go in cargo travel with airlines. So the first one is Magnum. But they, I guess they are like the I want to say number one example of a
Yes.
perfect crate for people to get. The only thing I don't like is they're out of the country.
Yeah, that's
Not that you can't order, but they're out of the country.
yeah.
And they have everything perfectly down as what you look for in a crate. So,
Right.
Dr. Bryant, if you can explain more what
Yeah,
makes them perfect.
what I like most about the Magnum crates is the fact that they are compliant with IATA, which is, and I think you guys heard me talk about it before, IATA is the International Air Transportation Association. They have the live animal regulations manual, and they'll define the criteria for crates. Crates are containers for any animal species that are transported by cargo. And as far as the Magnum crate, yes, it meets the requirements for the IATA LAR. So I really do like that about them. There's another one too we had discussed before. What was that other one again?
The other one is called Impact, and they are exactly like Magnum. They have several different styles of crates, and there's only one that we do not agree with, and that's the collapsible crate.
Yeah.
So Dr. Bryant, if you can explain that.
Yeah, the Impact crates are very good too, very solid. I believe they're aluminum, but they're very solid, sturdy crates. I hate to say it, on a bit pricey side, but they definitely, from looking at them, I believe they do meet the requirements for IATA LAR. Be careful though, because there's one style that is collapsible, and that would not be allowed for travel by cargo because of the potential of it collapsing during transport. You wouldn't want that to happen. But those are definitely two that will meet the requirements for IATA LAR.
Absolutely. And so, a couple of times we've gotten comments with, you say all these things as to what not to look for. Can you give a suggestion of a crate that would be perfect? So I'm glad that we were able to come up with at least two. And, to meet all of the regulations, it's going to be pricey. So, if you're someone who loves to travel and, you want a crate you're not going to have to buy over and over again, and something meets the IATA regulations, then these two crates are the ones that you want to look for. And that's Magnum, and then a Magnum crate, and then also Impact. Impact is here in the United States, but Magnum is outside of the United States. So wherever our viewers are looking from, I guess we got one for everybody.
Right. The routine crates that are used typically are the pet mate crates, and I believe they have to be modified to meet the IATA standards. So just be aware that the typical pet mates crates that you find at PetSmart or Petco or those companies, a lot of them, and if it's not pet mate, a lot of the other ones that are sold in those locations have to be modified to meet IATA standards. So be aware of that. So if you do all your due diligence, you're ready for your flight, you take your pet to the cargo and they say not compliant, you're like, wait, well, they have to be modified to meet those requirements. So, and what I can do too, I can very, very well have available on our website, the pet container requirements, and that'll help a person if they need to modify their crate further too. So I'll make a point of doing that.
Okay. And we have Magnum up on our site. We just have to get Impact up on there, and that'll also be a great, if people can't remember the name or can't find it on the internet, they know that they can go to winpets.com to figure to our Dr. Bryant's favorite things underneath that tab, and they'll be able to find the crates there. So
that's a good idea.
Let's see. Also, since we mentioned positive pet health certificates, I wanted to also mention another great resource that we brought on here for everyone to remember is World Pet Travel. So if you aren't shipping your pets yourself, or taking them with you, World Pet Travel is a great organization to help you travel anywhere in the world. They've been at it for, I believe, 20 years or something like that.
Yeah, she's been in for a long time. That was Angela Passman of World Pet Travel. She is with, I believe, if I'm correct, she's the president of IPATA, which is an International Pet and Animal Transportation Association. So she's very familiar with transporting pets, all the requirements. So if you can't do it yourself, or if you need assistance, that's a great person to go to as well.
Okay. Well, let's see. Also, I just wanted to point out real quick to everyone, if you ever need to get a 30-minute consultation, Dr. Bryant has a form, or you can go onto her website, winpets.com, and under the contact page, you can go on her Calendly and schedule an appointment with Dr. Bryant, a 30-minute consultation to talk about pet travel or to talk about your pet specifically traveling with you. So again, Dr. Bryant is offering 30-minute consultations on her site, and you can schedule that on her Calendly. So, but now that we are at the 10-minute mark, 10 past 1, let me bring on our guest, Rochelle Watkins Rogers.
Hi, Rochelle.
Hi, Rochelle. How are you?
Here.
I'm good. Hi, everybody from Florida.
Awesome. How's the weather in Florida?
Warm.
Warm. We have a rainy day here today, unfortunately. It's been kind of rainy off and on, but not as warm. But no, happy to hear you bringing sunshine to us then. Look at that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to again read Rochelle's bio to everyone so we can introduce her to all of our watchers. So here we go. Rochelle Watkins Rogers, ATACP instructor, course administrator, and retired zoological professional. She's a retired professional who consults for the zoological industry about animal permits, logistics, and records for zoological transport. Rochelle Watkins Rogers, who has been in the zoological community for over 50 years and brings 20 years of logistics experience as a zoological registrar. Rochelle was previously responsible for records management, permits, and regulatory compliance for a large AZA-accredited zoological park in Miami, Florida. Rochelle is a professional retired member of AZA, ZRA, FAZA, and is still active as an instructor and course administrator for the AZA Animal Transport for Animal Care Professionals, ATACP course. She has worked in animal care for 25 years, but began as a zoo volunteer at the age of 10 at the Louisville Zoo in Kentucky. She has worked at San Diego Zoo, Louisville Zoo, El Paso Zoo, Mannheimer Criminological Foundation, Monkey Jungle, Parrot Jungle, Jackson Zoo, Crandon Park Zoo, Elephant Department before Miami Metro Zoo opened, and retired from Zoo Miami in 2021. She has served on working groups for USDA contingency planning during the beginning of the ZAHP, which is the Zoo and Aquarium All Hazards Partnership, collaborations with zoos and how to deal with avian influenza in zoological collections. Rochelle has served on AZA scientific advisory groups, biomaterials banking and data management, AZA government affairs committee, and was an AZA North American regional stud bookkeeper, species manager for the Cuban American PMP. Rochelle is currently working as a mentor to animal professionals about permits, record keeping, and logistics. Her passion is helping people to improve animal transport for animal welfare, animal records management, and mentoring zoological professionals about permits or best practices. She also works with private sector individuals or facilities that wish to improve their animal transport logistics or permits and records management methods. That was a whole mouthful, but everyone,
what a background. That is awesome. Gosh, I had no idea it was to that level. I mean, I met you and I was amazed. And I think I told you, side note, before this, I was sharing with Greta how you organized the event at AZA for folks, that's Association of Zoos and Aquariums. They had an annual conference last year in Baltimore, and Rochelle organized this session. and it was phenomenal. I mean, I was a part of it. I was so happy she chose me to be a part of it, but it was phenomenal as far as design and the information that was shared. Excuse me, my
I
dog.
liked it too.
Amazing. So I think very highly of it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, there was a group of people, core people that were helping to put that together. I was like the one that, like, what they called herded the cats.
You did an awesome job. Let me get my dog in the other room. I'm sorry, guys. Come on, baby. I love you.
There's always something going on with us.
Yeah. Hey, that's the way it is with animals. You know, you never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. And they always want to be a part of whatever we're doing. So that's why we love our pets so much.
She's my girl. She just had to let it be known that she's a large dog too. You know,
Yeah.
I can't forget her. So she decided to chime in a little bit and let me know about it. But again, I'm so happy, Rochelle, you're here. Let's get it started. I mean,
Okay.
we heard all the things, but I mean, that's on paper what you've done, which is amazing and outstanding history and commitment to the zoo industry. So I think that's really great. But let's see what else we can get people, inspire others. Maybe I wanted you here because I know we're not talking about per se pets,
Right.
but I want folks to realize animal transportation is a big deal. And for our zoos, that's conservation of the different animal species. So I just thought you're a great person. It's an opportunity to get to learn more about you and also, again, share some interesting information. So I'm happy you're here.
Absolutely. I think that, a lot of people don't realize how much goes into animal transport for zoos because we're a lot more regulated. We also have a lot more different specialized groupings of different types of animals. I know there's tons of different types of breeds of dogs, and some are very delicate and banned from shipping because of those problems of their breathing, airways, and everything. But, there are animals that are very delicate, psychologically, they stress easily, or they're very high energy, like a hummingbird has to eat throughout the flight so they don't die before they get there, So, I mean, you have to know a lot of stuff. And that's why the veterinarian, to do that pre-ship physical, the health certificate you were talking about, they have to know, more than just about dogs. They have to know about a lot of different species, but of which there are canids and felids that are part of those groupings of animals. So in a way, it's the same, but a small portion of what a zoo deals with.
Right. I think, like I said, your area is more specialized again, because again, we might have a feline or felidae or canidaes, but you guys have just a wide variety of animals. So for the veterinarian that's doing the health certificates and checking these animals prior to travel, there's a lot for them to kind of know about those particular animals and how they respond during stressful situations. Stress is all animals will have stress during transport, is to be expected. So we need to know that. We need to have the
I can give you a really good example of a international transport that I was involved with, where the stress factor and the temperature factor had to come together. And being in Miami, it was difficult to meet that sweet spot.
Right.
And we actually had to renew the permit. Miami was exporting a giant otter to Colombia, and we had to be able to ship the animal when it was 70 degrees. But 70 degrees here and in Colombia, 70 degrees had to be the same coming and going before the airline would allow the shipment to go. Right. And so the reason being, otters when their stress level goes up, their core body temperature goes up, and they can get white muscle disease, which is a core body temperature cooks the muscles, and it's very detrimental. They can die from it, They can either be impaired or die, Yeah,
what it all boils down to is basically heat stroke. is what they're dying of. I
Exactly.
mean, it's you're getting too old.
It was like a year before we could get that animal out, and I had to renew the permit because every 6 months you had to renew so it would expire every 6 months if you don't use it.
I love your example because even though it's not a dog or a cat, it's still an animal, and it's showing that during every animal is going to stress. They can get overheated during it. So if the external temperature, your ambient temperature forecasted is higher, then it's a no-go for flight. So you can't get angry. All these are safety features in place for that animal,
Right.
So I love the example.
And so one really important factor in the stress level of being in the crate is the animal being trained to be in the crate for long periods of time and not getting stressed out. So there was crate training that happens beforehand. I was working with an elephant shipment where they crate trained the elephant for a year before he got exported. So if the animal is not, because he had to be in the crate, when he went through the time zones and everything, it was more than a day. And he had to be fed in there. And, they had to be able to clean the crate. And, all of the matter had to be, kept separate because of the quarantine requirements. And everything had to be, disposed of according to protocol. So it's like, you don't realize all of the things from A to B that, encompasses what happens when an animal's going.
I love it because again, your example is more detailed, but it's still hitting on the same key features that we've been saying. Greta, we've been saying it, and others that's been on the show have been saying the same thing. Okay, you have to have, number one, they have to be acclimated to their crate. It's extremely important. For zoo animals, a year. Well, it might even take a good portion of time for your routine dog or cat. So just be aware that all animals need to be acclimated to confinement in that container for transport, because if not, they can stress out. They can try to, prime example, I've been reviewing, I have a presentation coming up next week. I'm going to be doing, reviewing the DOT reportable events from the US from 2005 on to the present. And from say 2005 to 2015, during that time frame, there were cases of, as far as animal incidents reported. They were either incidents or either injury, escapes, or deaths. Yes, they were reported. I say on the average, say 48 per year during that time frame. They didn't have the number of animals, so it was hard to really display what the percentage-wise, you could say. They do now, from 2016 on, they do monitor the number of animals being transported. But let me backtrack a little bit. I bring this up to say that a lot of these incidents were due to the fact that these animals are trying to break out of the crates. They're not acclimated. Also, underlying health conditions. See, the coolest thing about zoo animals is that you definitely have a veterinarian there to do a little bit more than probably just say signing a health certificate. I bet you they're evaluating the medical history on these animals before transport, correct?
And in Miami's case, the head veterinarian of the department was a veterinary advisor to the small carnivore tag that was over the Asian, the giant otters, giant otters that went to South America.
Right. No, so
she was an expert in that species. So she knew, so they had an expert advisor that knew that particular species, and other zoos could be advised by her. So they have like all of these resources to draw on of people that are specialized in different fields.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I think what I've learned is that, at least my impression, is that a lot of the veterinary profession has not really taken a big stab into animal transportation as they should have or could have, or hopefully maybe we're going down that path now. I'm hoping we're heading down that path. But the veterinary profession has not really been that much involved, more than say signing a health certificate, maybe, which I hate, offering sedation to animals, which AVMA says no, but you have veterinarians still doing it. So, the involvement as far as within animal travel, the veterinary industry, veterinarians has not really been as active as other sectors, I would say has been. So that's my hope as far as moving forward, we'll get more activity as far as veterinarians doing these more than your health certificates. Let's check to make sure these animals are fit to travel. That's going to be the key right there.
Yeah, there's a lot of evaluations, like all the paperwork that's done beforehand. I mean, we can't even proceed without the owner of the animal approving. In some cases, the owner is a government. The owner is another zoo. The owner is a private individual. The owner is a consortium. So it may not be the own zoo that it's in is the owner of the animal. So that right off the bat, then all the documents have to be signed. Then the veterinarian will look at the medical records that's getting the animal, and they'll say go or no go according to their collection, and their diseases or things that they've dealt with in their institution. Sometimes an animal is too old to ship, and they opt to ship the other animal that they're supposed to go with if it's a pairing. In some cases, you can't do that. You can't ship a whole herd of elephants just because one animal's too old. So sometimes they do artificial insemination. So they ship the animal's gametes instead of the animal. So there's a lot of different ways to ship animals, and not all of them is the whole live animal.
Awesome. Amazing. Hey, Greta, let's start with some questions if we can, because I'm sure Rochelle and I can probably go backwards and forwards a lot of stuff. So, but I'm sure there's some things that the folks will have some questions about. Can we maybe hit on some of those?
Yes, absolutely. Let me draw one up here. A simple one to start with. Where do zoos get their animals, and how do zoos get their animals?
Well, I'll answer the first part, and then I'll answer the second part. Where do zoos get their animals? There's a huge, still to this day, some people still have the misconception that all the zoo animals are gotten from the wild. That's totally not true at all. The zoo industry has worked very hard with a plethora of species, and even with other governments to have captive bred, and in some cases, if we're lucky enough, released captive bred species. So some of those animals go on loans. Some of those animals are released to the wild. Some species are still collected from the wild, but in some cases, zoos are called upon, like back when the chytrid virus was starting to decimate wild frogs. The government asked, please help us, and asked us to come to the rescue and house some of these animals. So it was kind of like collecting from the wild, but in a quarantine situation. So it would be like a USDA quarantine forever, of these animals until they had tests. Because I don't even think that back then that there was all of the medical testing that they have now and treatments, and some of it was developed through that work. But it's just, there's a lot of different factors of, if you get a captive one from another zoo, or, and it depends on what the status of that species is. And then how do you get the animals? Sometimes there's confiscations. Sometimes we get animals because other people get them taken away from them, and we have to hold them indefinitely, or they get transferred back to the person if they've met the requirements of the legal problems that they encumbered. Or sometimes we have breeding that's successful. So a lot of times in those breeding contracts, if it's two owners involved, they share in the breeding. And so if it's a successful breeding, sometimes you have problems finding enough homes for the breeding, and you have to say, we're not going to breed this animal for a while now because we have too many, and sometimes that happens. I mean, in Miami, they had a litter of African wild dogs, 13. in the litter. And so the breeding loan was every other litter. And so all 13 of those were ours.
That's a lot. That's a
It
lot.
wasn't if we could split the 13 with the other zoo. They were like, that was your litter.
Very fruitful. Wow. Yeah. Very interesting.
That's great. It's funny. You guys were talking about transport and said so much in regards to that. That we actually have a question. Let's see, and I don't think you touched on this. So, are there any zoo animals that need to be transported in the aircraft cabin?
There are, and there are some that cannot be unless they're approved. I was involved with an import of sloths from Panama that the animals were allowed in the cabin, but they had to be in the crates. So they were in a seat next to the keeper. And so we paid for 2 seats, one for the animal, one for the keeper. And then there was another transport, but back in the 80s that I was involved with, of a baby orangutan that was too small to be transported from Europe with his mother in the crate. And so the keeper that hand reared animals in that zoo was also the head keeper. And they took the baby, she held the baby in the VIP section of the plane. And it was an infant. It wasn't making any sounds. Nobody hardly even knew it was there. So she held the baby there. And then when it landed in Miami, then everybody got to see the baby, but they had to stay away because, it was an infant. Then as soon as they immobilized the mother, before they uncrated her, they put her back with the mother. And then it was, she woke up with her baby. But because the baby could have been suffocated in the crate. And it was dangerous for the baby that size to be shipped. And that's against the regulations to ship the baby that size.
Yeah. And also I would imagine, so the mother orangutan was sedated for shipment?
No, she was not sedated for shipment. She was in the cargo bay of the plane, but it was like one of the large clipper jets. It was Continental Airlines, which doesn't exist anymore, and so the baby was named Clipper. But she was in the cargo in the crate, and then the baby was in the cabin with the handler, the head keeper.
Yeah. I would say in my experience, working with Delta, we don't routinely do situations like that as far as animals, zoo animals being transported in cabin. Special circumstances would have to be met for, if it happened, special circumstances would have to be met to let that happen. Right. And you got to be so careful this day and age.
Well,
if you allow it, you give the impression, if you do allow it, you give the impression that everybody can do it.
Right. Part of the backstory is also that zoo was closing down, and all the great apes were being sort of rehomed. So their gorilla collection, their bonobo collection, their orangutan collection was all being shipped out as soon as possible because they were selling the property, closing the zoo. It was kind of like not an emergency evacuation, but the permits were issued rather quickly for the import into the United States because actually Continental Airlines donated a large portion of the cost of the transport because we did some media PR stuff for them at the port of entry when the babies and the mother were reunited and stuff. They also got to come back and see them together. But it was a really cool story. But and everything was successful. And
that's great. I'm sure it was a big effort.
But yeah, they wanted to get them out quickly as another reason why there was some special compensations made for certain things.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a great story. Another question that we had was, what kind of experience do zoo staff have to transport animals?
So for commercial people, there are, you have to be licensed and everything. Each zoo has their own training and, onboarding ways that they train their staff. But there's also a requirement by USDA, that your staff be trained for contingency planning, which is also a part of animal transport. Right. So if anybody's involved with animal transport, they do, according to USDA, have to be trained for that. But also any kind of animal care, which if you're doing land transport, you have to be trained in that, is also dictated by USDA regulations, that people have to know how to take care of the type of animal that they're caring for, and how to be safe and how to keep the animal safe. So there are regulations that cover that type of thing. And each zoo, like I said, depending on what type of animals they have or how many animals they have, and how many people they have working with the animals, have different types of training procedures.
Yeah. Animal transportation is not as simple as just put it in any type of container. I know for a fact with you guys, the IATA, as I mentioned earlier, IATA regulations, IATA LAR is extremely important that animals are being transported in those type of containers that comply with that. So that's really
exactly
crucial.
Because it's an AZA requirement that all the animals are traveling according to the LAR.
Yeah, that's perfect. Wow. I love it. Yeah, that's very key thing. And the LAR, I mean, I don't know if you've done it, but I've done the IATA LAR train. Actually, I did the live animal transportation course with them a couple of years back. It was totally amazing. It really, actually, what it did was, how I describe it like someone reading the Bible and doing Bible study is how I described it. The LAR, we went into detail over each section and have really got a good in-depth knowledge of the manual itself. So outstanding.
Yeah,
so.
Once people learn how to use it, it's a valuable tool. But sometimes it's so overwhelming that, they buy it and they hardly use it. And it drives me crazy.
It's expensive. It's about 300. I think it's $319, something like that.
It's and like small zoos go,
yeah, it's expensive.
But it's very valuable information, and it gives people an education by species of what airlines will accept certain species. Like, for example, Delta is one of the few, I think only airline that most of the zoos use for shipping venomous reptiles. And that's a problem. If you have a breeding program for a venomous reptile species, if you don't ship them yourself, how are you going to move those animals around? And that's part of the problem with the urgency for people to network or learn about each other's issues or training needs is when one airline shuts down a particular route, it could have a devastating effect on a release program, or a zoo having an ability to move a certain species of animal. And so everybody needs to bone up, especially if you're shipping an animal with you. Know what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, because the safety of that animal impacts other people's ability to ship animals. And it's very important. We rely on people, to help us to know how to ship animals. We know how to ship animals, but when things go wrong, often the whole industry gets impacted by it.
Well, what I've been doing and what I've been trying to do, and I'm very happy that you've been open to me. I want to get out of our bubbles that we've been in and
Yeah.
realize that everybody's connected in some way, form, or fashion. I'm very proud and thankful for that I'm working with Delta, being the only veterinarian working within an airline, and I think it's really needed because I love connecting with folks in the zoos, and they're saying I had someone reach out to me. They were transporting a mongoose. I guess a group of mongoose, can't call them mongooses.
Yeah.
But they were shipping up a group of them, and we worked together to develop a IATA compliant container for them to ship them in. And it was interesting because the mongoose species are injurious animals, so there were other particular regulations on top of it. It was like double containment, so we did a crate inside of a crate and built it so it had all the water and food receptacles all in place, and we met the requirements, and it was awesome. I was so happy to help her. Side note for folks to remember in general or also within zoos, please be careful with using plastic crates that are older, that maybe you purchased off of Craigslist or I don't know, Marketplace, Facebook Market. Be careful because they degrade and they will crack and they will shatter during transport. So be careful with that. But like I said, I say that for my pet parents and also within zoos, because you guys use those plastic crates too, right?
Yes. And, it's quite often, the one that's not stored properly or the one that's not, or you use too harsh of a chemical cleaning it, and it degrades the plastic.
Yep.
There's that's why a lot of zoos now in their transaction paperwork will just include the cost of the crate. So they use it one time, you get the animal, you keep the crate. Because in a cost saving, sometimes shipping the crate back and forth doesn't save money. If it comes back damaged, then you have to go back and forth about the replacement or repair. It becomes a whole other thing. So a lot of times zoos now just say, we'll ship you the animal, you pay for the crate up front, and you keep the crate. And that way it also means there's you're able to turn over your crate inventory with incoming new crates, which is a good thing too. If they're the right kind of crates and they're kept, clean and stored properly, then yes.
It's hard to say though, because I don't even know. Is there particular guidelines on it? I'll be honest with you. Maybe I'm not familiar, but
maybe each company has something in the little things.
They need to say have a little guideline, should be stored at blah, 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 the temperature, something. Because
and it probably has to do with whatever the crate is made out of, so probably a wire crate is different than a plastic coated wire crate than a nylon crate,
Yeah, definitely. There's different variations around it. One thing that I say about those plastic crates, and I'm sorry, side note, one interesting thing about them is that there's no expiration date on those. I don't know if you ever know. I don't believe there's any expiration dates on them. And there should be. Right. If we're using plastic, there should be an expiration date. I always say, infant car seats, and I'm surprised to learn this. And I guess I didn't know because I only have one kid, but they expire too. I believe they expire after like 7 years. So if there's an expiration date on an infant car seat, why can't there be an expiration date on a travel crate for pets? Because the plastic,
the plastic ones. Now, like if it's a metal crate,
not the metal ones. I'm talking plastic ones.
They have to make sure they're specific out in the wording. But I agree. They're, because they degrade over time, and that's saying if you're storing it properly, then it has that life expectancy.
Right. But I don't think they give it an expectancy, but there should be because it's recycled plastic.
Yeah.
That we should know how long it should be lasting for. Somebody else I was saying this to someone else, and they say, hey, even mattresses have an expiration date on mattresses. So there should be. This is just a side note, though.
No, agreed.
We have one more question that we can get in. What is the longest, most complicated, or largest animal transport you had to plan?
Elephant. Worked with importing an elephant from Australia to Florida, and that was the elephant that was trained for a year in a specialized crate. And when the plane took off, it had to take off in a circle because the weight, he was the only cargo in the plane, because the weight of the animal, if he shifted too much from one side to the other, would throw the plane off and it could come down. So they had to fly off in a circle like this to go up. So they had a pit stop for refueling in Honolulu, Hawaii. We already had a plan that the Honolulu Zoo was our backup plan if something went wrong when they landed. And we had an in-transit on our itinerary for our import permit that they were going to stop there and refuel, but the animal was not getting off the plane. Well, they had a volcano eruption, and I said, I'm sitting there watching the volcano eruption thinking to myself, I wonder what that's going to do. And so I log into their emergency management website and noticed there would be a potential tsunami that would put water all over the runway and that the zoo would be flooded if this tsunami happened. And I was freaking out. So I immediately sent an email in the middle of the night to all these wildlife agencies, or sometime in the middle of the day. I don't even remember now. It was a blur because I was so panicked thinking, what am I going to do? Because what people may not realize is when you have a permit, and if you say you're going to go here, here, and here, but you go here, your permit is no good and they take your animals. So I want to go here, here, and here. I don't want to go here. So I had to tell them, if this happens, we might have to go here because the plane might have to land someplace else to refuel. I didn't know where that would be, but I was leaving that up to the pilot, not my job. So they said, well, what are you talking about? Your permit said you're landing in Honolulu. I understand. Here's the link to the emergency website. Here's the link about the tsunami. Here's a map of the area where the landing strip is. And then I got an email back. It looks like you have a problem. Yes, I do. That's why I'm contacting you. Problem. Help me. You know? I want to be able to sleep at night, you know. I would do that. I would watch the flight on that Flight Aware whenever they left. Sometimes I'd be watching for 2 days and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd log into my computer. Where are they now? Okay, Germany. All right. You know, I mean, because it's you can't get it off your mind. It's when you're that close to something, you know, even though I'm not the zookeeper, I'm watching the flight, you know.
So did our elephant made it? No problem. What happened? Did we
made it in, landed, cleared customs before they landed. We had excellent customs broker, priority one. Love those guys. And they got all the paperwork taken care of, and then Port of Miami inspectors did the inspection. We had police officers had to escort us to the zoo because elephants are a kind of a high profile animal, and there were threats made before the animal left the zoo in Australia. So he was kind of we already knew that there was a potential threat. So the police followed the trucks front and back to the zoo. We were driving in the middle of the night. It was like a 16, 17-hour day for me. I was like exhausted at the end of it. Then they, and the people that did the unloading, I'm sure were totally, and the guys from Melbourne Zoo were like really exhausted.
Yeah.
But it was incredible to be involved with that. And I had a binder with copies of everything because you never know when somebody's going to ask you about something. And I was the one that had to deal with the wildlife agencies and had all the documents and all of the permits and everything, the records, and we had to provide an itinerary. The people that were on the plane had to provide all their, passport information, their driver's license. They had to have a background check in advance and be approved to be able to be in the plane with the elephant. So that was all before the elephant ever left, before, and it was an amazing, everything went very smoothly. We were so happy.
That's good. That's perfect. Whew.
That was certainly
a lot. Yeah.
That was a great story. I wanted to give you a minute, Rochelle, to explain to everyone, or just tell everybody, how did you get into zoo transportation?
Well, so I am a second generation zookeeper and third generation from an animal training family. My dad was an animal trainer, and he was working in actually a performing with animals, and then quit before the Endangered Species Act because he said, my job isn't going to exist anymore, and started working in the 60s in the St. Louis Zoo. Marlon Perkins hired him. And so my dad was a zookeeper at the St. Louis Zoo, and then he came to the Louisville Zoo, and we were doing performing there and elephant rides, and then they stopped doing the shows, and then we worked in the elephant area and went just to animal care at that point. And then after the Louisville Zoo, I started working in other AZA accredited zoos, and pretty much I got involved in everything. I was in the American Association of Zookeepers. I got involved with AZA, and I just felt a calling to a lot of these things where you just keep learning. And so when and then when I became a registrar, I said, there's got to be a group that does this stuff. I didn't know about the Zoological Registrars Association. Well, I applied for the scholarship, and I got the scholarship. So that's how I got to my first registrars conference, and started seeing that there was a lot of stuff not being written down, and there was a lot of records keeping things that weren't being done right. And it was a lot of, because there's a lot of, turnover. And that's what happens at the cargo offices, which is a problem of communication and training. You're constantly getting new people in, and zoos have the same problem. So back in 2012, I was asked to be involved by the first course administrator for the animal transport course, to do a talk for this workshop. And I wasn't going to the workshop, but I was part of this, this idea about animal transport. So I did a talk about the shipping packet and what's supposed to go in the shipping packet, what's required, what's best practice, what should be in it. And the shipping packet is what the airlines use to, stamp the papers, and what the animals, are supposed to be presented to the next person that gets them, with their history and things like that. A lot of stuff is done electronically now, but some things, especially with an international shipment.
For the airline itself, again, things are done electronically, yes, but for the airline, if they're not connected to your system, they're not going to get it. So we need that packet. We need all of it there.
Even a copy of it, because I always say have duplicate copies so that you can get a copy with that stamp, especially with the international shipments. But so the course ended up in the zoo that I was working at, and the previous course administrator stepped down, and I was asked if I would take on the course, and I was like, well, I guess I could. Yeah. So I guess I could until 2020, and then then I retired in 2021, and I had been doing the course administrator work, organizing it, and it had been in person up until 2020 was the last in-person course. Then COVID hit. So we had to change our whole syllabus to a virtual course. So 2021, the year that I retired, I did the course from my bedroom because my kitchen was being renovated. And I did the whole course from my bedroom office. Then now we're redoing the course, and we're going to have a new and improved version in 2024. And we've got a couple of new instructors that are on the course. One is a registrar at the Baltimore Zoo in Maryland, or Maryland Zoo in Baltimore, sorry. And one is a registrar at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park in California. And I'm looking forward to working with them. And we're really, right now we're doing outreach so that we can get, what do you guys need? What's important? How are you doing training at your zoo? And just kind of doing gathering of information and asking questions.
Well, I could say I think it's awesome. Your background, like I said, it's amazing. I can see though, standardizing things and communicating within the zoo industry as far as the different zoos, things need to be structured as far as just the animal transportation point. Like I said, I've worked with some zoos where they want to work with the airline and they want to make sure they do things correctly. And then we have others that are more concerned, and it might be because they're a younger generation. They just want to get the animals going. And they're not thinking, they're thinking they're making choices for the animal, but they're really not. They're just trying to get it to their location. And as we said before, temperatures, all these things come into play.
Right.
So slow down a minute. Make sure everything's in order for the animal. Make sure we got the compliant containers, and think of the animal. I'm making it my own term now. Make it more animal centric. Let's think about that animal. Let's think about
I think like we have a exercise that we do in the animal transport course. We call it the crate demo, and what we do is we put a bunch of crates outside and we let them sit there all day. And then the students will get, to see the different types of crates. They get to critique them. We ask questions. And then some of them are large enough that people go inside the crate. And we close them inside the crate and go, okay, how you feel? And the ones that I really hate, because I've been inside of one of them, are the metal ones. If you bang on those too much, it's very loud. And the banging of the metal is very difficult to, it makes a lot of vibration, and it's loud and it's hard to hear.
And think about for the animals.
They're more sensitive than we are.
Sensitive, yeah.
Yep. So we do an exercise like that. And then also I think some zoos ship animals every week because of their size of their collection. And some zoos do not ship animals that frequently.
Right.
So I think some of the part of that, is training and the opportunity to learn and get experience doing that type of stuff. And then also what type of shipping you're doing. There's emergency shipping, there's wildlife rehab shipping, there's ambassador animals going out to school. That's animal transport. But, it's an animal that's used to being around people, and it could be, something that's in a crate in somebody's van, that's used to doing this every week. It's almost like it's trained for transport, so that animal's a lot different than, the elephant that you plan for 2 years to ship that goes in 2 days,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm really almost done,
sorry.
right? Goodness, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say I wanted to thank Rochelle for joining us today and really sharing a lot of information in regards to animal transport. There's a lot of similarities to pet transportation, especially in the preparation aspect. It's important to know that certain standards have to be cross the all barriers that deal with animals.
All animal shipments, they all have to comply. Folks don't think it, but all animals have to be shipped in these IATA compliant containers for that animal species, and it has to be the current version. So you have to realize it's across the board for everyone.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
That really drives home the importance of it. So I was really glad to hear that information as reflected from another angle. So it's not just Dr. Bryant beating the drum about that, but it is across all boards dealing with animals.
Well, I am so happy you were here. I'm hoping that we can still continue doing. You and I, of course, Rochelle, we're going to still continue doing things in the future.
Yes,
together.
I need you for the next course.
Yes. We have a call coming up soon. So we are definitely going to continue working together to see what we can do to, in a sense, ensure all zoo animals also get to their destination safely.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for your work in that regard. And I appreciate too the pet community, because really they think that they don't impact us, but they really are important to us.
Mm-hmm.
And the airlines that are, doing their best to, I have never heard of an airline besides Delta that has a veterinarian as part of their staff. And I think that is so important to the animals that fly on Delta. And I think there should be more airlines that have consulting veterinarians.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. I love it. Yeah, I agree too, because everyone will be just again, having a veterinarian there to kind of connect these different, again, everybody has their bubbles. Let's start connecting out and realizing that it's all related. And veterinarians, as a veterinarian, our roles are more than just clinical practice. We can work in the airline industry and also have an impact. So
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. We are over time. Greta, I don't know if you want to wrap up or how you want to do it going further, but it didn't shut off, so we can keep going, I guess. But we're over our Greta, I'm just happy we had this event today, and I'm so excited to honestly be back on Facebook Live because I was away for about a month. So we're going to continue on. We have good things planned for the future. The rest of this month, actually, right, Greta? We got a few other things that are going to be coming this way, correct?
Yep, absolutely. So our next Facebook Live, which is in 2 weeks on the 24th, we actually are going to be talking all service animals, service dogs. So that'll be an exciting one for everyone to tune into. But I did want to take just a second to say, Rochelle, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure learning about you, your background, and everything that you do. And I wish I would have known about it when I was a younger girl as a possibility. I might have been one of your cohorts in crime trying to get the elephant in the pushing him in the airline. So thank you for everything that you've done, and I look forward to having you back with us on other things.
Definitely.
No problem. Anytime.
Awesome.
I enjoyed it
so much. All right, guys. I guess we're set. See you in 2 weeks. You said, all right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Oh, absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Got